Harriet Tubman, the woman who walked with shadows. She was born into chains. Beaten before she was even old enough to understand why. Her childhood was scarred by whips, blood, and screams in the night. And yet, she rose. Her name was Harriet Tubman. A woman who carried no sword, no army, no wealth. Only faith, courage, and a will that could not be broken. To her enemies, she was a thief. To her people, she was Moses. This is her story. The story of a woman who walked into the darkness again and again, to lead her people into the light. Born in chains. Harriet Tubman was born Araminta Ross around the year 1822, in Maryland. Her parents were enslaved. Her grandparents had been stolen from Africa. From the very beginning, she was not seen as a child. She was seen as property. Her name was entered in a ledger, alongside cows, tools, and land. As a little girl, she watched her sisters ripped away from her mother and sold to other masters. Their screams pierced her heart. Their hands reached for her mother, and then they were gone forever. At just 5 years old, she was forced to work. Her task was to care for a white woman's baby. If the baby cried, Harriet was whipped. Her tiny back carried scars before she even knew how to read or write. At 7, she was set to work in the fields. The mornings were cold. Her feet bare against frozen ground. Her stomach empty. By 13, she endured the wound that nearly killed her. An overseer threw a heavy iron weight. It struck her skull. Blood gushed. Her vision went dark. She should have died. Instead, she survived. But the injury left her with seizures, headaches, and strange visions. Harriet believed these visions came from God. And she clung to them as proof she was chosen for something greater. The weight of slavery. As Harriet grew, the chains around her grew heavier. She labored from sunrise to sunset. She endured hunger, thirst, exhaustion. She saw men beaten until their bones snapped. She saw women dragged away, never to return. She heard children cry themselves to sleep, waiting for mothers who had been sold. This was the world she knew, a world of terror. And yet, she prayed. She sang the spirituals of her people, songs that carried hidden messages of hope. She whispered to God in the woods at night. Her body was scarred, but her spirit burned with a single thought. I will not die in chains. The escape. In 1849, Harriet made her choice. She would run. The night was thick with fog. The forest echoed with dogs and hunters. Slave catchers rode horses with torches, waiting to drag her back. Every step was agony. Cold water rose to her chest in swamps. Branches tore at her skin. Her lungs burned with fear. But she pressed forward. Guided by the North Star, step by step, mile by mile. Until finally, she crossed into Philadelphia. For the first time in her life, she was free. But her freedom was not enough. Her family, her people, were still in chains. And so, Harriet turned back. Moses of her people. What Harriet did was unthinkable. She returned again and again to the South. 19 times she risked her life. Each time, leading men, women, and children out of slavery. She carried a pistol. Not only to protect against slave catchers, but to ensure that no one in her group lost courage. If someone turned back, they risked everyone's life. So Harriet would say. You will be free, or you will die. She led them through swamps that swallowed the weak. Through forests haunted by the sounds of hunting dogs. Through icy rivers where the current pulled at their legs. She disguised herself. She used secret codes and songs to signal safety. And every single time, she succeeded. Over 300 souls found freedom because of her. Not once did she lose a passenger. To slave owners, she was a phantom. A shadow they could not catch. To her people, she was Moses. The Civil War. When the Civil War began in 1861, Harriet Tubman did not rest. She joined the Union Army. She worked as a nurse, tending to soldiers broken by war. She used herbs and remedies to heal the wounded. She became a spy. She gathered secrets, moved behind enemy lines, risked death at every turn. But in 1863, Harriet achieved something extraordinary. She led a raid along the Combahee River in South Carolina. Guiding Union soldiers, she freed over 700 enslaved people in a single night. The fires of the plantations lit the sky. The cries of the freed filled the air. Harriet Tubman, once a slave girl, now stood as a military leader. The first woman in American history to command an armed raid. A life of sacrifice. After the war, Harriet could have lived in peace. But she gave everything she had to others. She opened her home to the poor, the sick, and the elderly. She fought for women's rights, standing beside leaders like Susan B. Anthony. She demanded that women, too, deserved the vote. Yet Harriet herself lived in poverty. The government refused for years to pay her for her service. She relied on donations to survive. Still, she never turned anyone away. Her home remained a place of refuge until her last days. The final years. Harriet Tubman grew old, but her spirit never weakened. She walked with dignity, carrying the weight of history on her small frame. In 1913, at the age of 91, she lay on her deathbed. Her final words were, "I go to prepare a place for you." She was buried with full military honors. On her tombstone, "Servant of God, well done." Outro, the legacy. Harriet Tubman was born a slave. She lived as a warrior. She died a legend. She was hunted, beaten, and scarred. But she was never broken. They called her Moses. Because she did not just walk into freedom. She carried her people with her. She struck fear into an empire built on chains. She brought hope to those who had none. And more than a century later, her story still burns like fire. A reminder that freedom has a price. And that true courage is born in the darkest of times. This is the story of Harriet Tubman. The woman who walked with shadows. And led her people into the light.